My name is Jasmine, and I am 93 years old, and I have lived long enough to watch money behave the same way in almost every generation. Even though people like to believe their time is different, their problems are unique, and the old rules no longer apply. I have seen people make fortunes and still live in fear, and I have seen people earn very little and sleep peacefully at night. And the difference was almost never intelligence, education, or luck, but the quiet relationship they formed with money early in life. I'm not speaking to you as an expert or an economist, but as someone who has watched decades of ordinary lives unfold and has seen how small financial habits slowly shape comfort or stress in ways people rarely notice until it's too late. Most people assume that financial trouble comes from not earning enough, and that belief keeps them chasing higher income while ignoring what actually determines their future. What I observed again and again was that money problems usually began much earlier, at the moment people decided to spend first and think later, trusting that tomorrow would somehow clean up today's choices. They treated money as something flexible, something forgiving, something that would adjust itself once life became easier, without realizing that money has a very good memory and never forgets how it was handled. When I was a young woman, I noticed that the people who seemed calm about money were not the ones with the biggest houses or the nicest cars, but the ones who made their decisions slowly and deliberately, who understood that money needs direction or it will simply drift away. Money does not disappear all at once, and that is why it is so dangerous, because it leaves quietly through small, reasonable decisions that feel harmless in the moment and only reveal their cost years later. Now, at 93, I no longer believe in complicated advice or clever strategies, because I have seen how little they matter compared to one simple understanding that changes everything. The biggest financial mistake I watched people make was believing that money problems could be solved later, after life settled down, after the children were grown, after the next raise, after the next opportunity finally arrived. I saw this belief quietly shape entire lives, because once you accept that idea, you begin borrowing comfort from the future without asking whether that future will actually exist in the way you imagine. People told themselves that spending a little more now was harmless, that saving could wait, that debt was temporary, and that things would naturally improve once they were earning more. But what actually happened was that their habits grew alongside their income, and the pressure never truly went away. I watched men and women earn twice as much as they did 10 years earlier and still feel just as trapped, because they never learned how to decide in advance what their money was for. Every increase simply expanded their lifestyle rather than their security, and by the time they realized they were still living month to month, they felt too tired, too embarrassed, or too overwhelmed to change. Money, when left without boundaries, has a way of disappearing into comfort and convenience, and once people get used to that comfort, it becomes very difficult to step back without feeling like something is being taken from them. What I learned is that money must be told where to go before it touches your hands, because if you wait until after you have spent it, there's almost never anything left to direct. The people who felt calm about money were not strict or miserable, but intentional, because they understood that peace does not come from having more, but from knowing that what you have is being handled with care. They saved small amounts consistently, avoided debt they did not truly need, and lived slightly below what they could afford, not because they were afraid to enjoy life, but because they wanted freedom more than appearance. By the time people reached their 60s, those early choices became very hard to undo, and I watched many of them wish they had taken money more seriously when the consequences were still light. What made me sad was that none of this required special knowledge, only the patience to delay comfort today so that tomorrow would not feel so heavy. As I grew older, I also began to understand how much of people's financial behavior had very little to do with numbers and almost everything to do with emotion, because many of the worst money decisions I witnessed were made not out of necessity, but out of comparison, fear, and the quiet desire to feel equal to those around them. I watched people take on debt not because they needed something essential, but because they did not want to feel left behind. And once debt entered their lives, it rarely stayed contained to one area, because it changed how they thought, how they slept, and how they related to the future. Debt has a way of shrinking your world slowly, because when part of your income already belongs to yesterday's choices, every new decision feels tighter, more stressful, and more urgent. I saw people with good jobs and stable families live with constant anxiety simply because too much of their money was already promised to someone else. What made this especially painful was that most of that debt came from moments meant to bring happiness, comfort, or relief, but instead created years of quiet pressure that never fully lifted. I also noticed how often people spent money to soothe feelings they did not want to sit with, such as loneliness, exhaustion, or dissatisfaction. And because buying something gives a brief sense of control or pleasure, it becomes an easy habit to repeat. The problem is that emotional spending never fixes the feeling that caused it. And once the moment passes, you're left not only with the same emotion, but with less money and more stress. Over time, this cycle teaches people to rely on spending as a coping tool, even as it quietly undermines their security. What I learned, watching this again and again, is that financial peace comes from learning to pause before spending, not to deny yourself joy, but to ask whether what you are buying is solving a real problem or simply distracting you from it. The people who learned this early were not richer, but they were calmer, because they were no longer using money to manage emotions it was never meant to carry. Now, at 93, when I look back at my own life and the lives of so many others, the lesson that stands out most clearly is not about earning more, investing smarter, or finding the perfect system, but about learning to live in a way that does not constantly borrow peace from the future. The people who aged with the least financial fear were not perfect with money, but they were consistent because they understood that small, steady decisions made early protect you far more than dramatic changes made late. They accepted that money is a tool meant to support life, not something to impress others with or something to escape difficult feelings through. If I could sit across from you now, I would not overwhelm you with rules or warnings, because I know how quickly people shut down when advice feels heavy. I would simply ask you to choose one habit to change, not because everything else is wrong, but because momentum begins with something manageable. That might mean deciding to save a small amount before you spend anything else, or choosing not to take on new debt unless it truly solves a long-term problem, or learning to sit with discomfort instead of spending money to escape it. These changes seem small, but over time they quietly reshape your future in ways you will only fully appreciate later. I want you to understand that money does not need to be a constant source of worry, and it does not require perfection, only attention and respect. I lived through years when I had very little and years when I had enough, and in both seasons, what mattered most was knowing that I was not avoiding reality, that I was facing my situation honestly and adjusting as needed. That honesty creates calm, and calm allows you to make better choices. You are still early in your story, even if it does not feel that way, and the choices you make with money today will either give your older self more freedom or more regret. I am 93, and I am telling you with the clarity that comes from the long view that financial peace is built slowly, quietly, and intentionally, and it begins the moment you stop postponing responsibility and start treating your future self with care.